born in 1906 in Glasgow, Kentucky, and her dad was an African-American reverend and her mother was Native American.
So Willa Brown was initially a teacher early on in her career. So she left Glasgow for Gary, Indiana in 1927, where she taught at Roosevelt High School. She then went on to graduate from today's Indiana State University and then got her master's from Northwestern University. So education was a huge deal to Willa Brown.
She first developed a passion for aviation when she was in primary school. She was really influenced by Bessie Coleman, who was a black woman who actually moved to France in order to be able to get her pilot's license. Then later in her life, she met John C. Robinson, who actually introduced her to a group of black pilots, which really helped get her involved in learning how to fly.
When you think about this time period when she started aviation school, it was the early 1930s, a time where a lot of these institutions were still segregated. So she started at a very notable school in 1934, the Harlem Field, where she met a man that later went on to become her husband, and she then eventually got her pilot's license from the Curtiss Wright Aeronautical School.
The first African-American woman to not only get her pilot's license, but she also got a commercial pilot's license and an airplane mechanic's license. So she was the first African-American woman to do each of those things individually, but she was also the first American woman in general to have both her mechanic's license and her commercial pilot's license.
So Willa and her husband, they went on to found the Coffee School of Aeronautics, where they taught over 200 airmen and some who then eventually went on to become the Tuskegee Airmen. So Willa is often credited for the creation of the Tuskegee Airmen. She had a hand in blazing a trail for other African Americans and other women African American women who wanted to be in the field as well. So with starting schools, starting organizations, being an advocate for gender equality and racial issues, Willa was a very impactful woman who really wanted to make a splash, and she did that.
She ran for office later, so she ran in the Republican Party primary in 1946 in Chicago. She was the first African-American woman to run for Congress. She did lose in both of the times that she ran in the primary, but nevertheless, she was the first African-American woman to even try to run. I couldn't find too much about her personal life. She was married 3 times. One of them was to one of her air instructors, but that marriage didn't last long. To me, it seems like she was so dedicated to her work for integration and teaching other black pilots that she really didn't have too much of a personal life. People described her as being really striking and really commanding. And one thing that I really like is that people said that she wasn't afraid to take on men, even if they were way bigger than her. So she just was like really strong and no nonsense. She still, did her hair and had her nails painted, but put those hands in an airplane engine and could fix it. She died in Chicago in 1992 and she was 86 years old. So finally 10 years after her death, she was inducted into the Kentucky Aviation Hall of Fame and then later was given a historical marker in Glasgow to honor her legacy in Kentucky. Kentucky really has been proud of our legacy in her growing up here a little bit. So yeah, the Kentucky Historical Society has a bust of her. So her story is one of a little bit more well-known that we feature here.
She needs to be recognized not only for the contributions she made in aviation, but the contributions that she made for society as well.